everybody that I've worked with, including, billionaire CEOs, have something that messes with them, whether it's some limiting belief or a view they have about themselves or some situation in their life. There's something that is a lid on what's possible in various areas of people's lives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women, where we talk about challenges senior female leaders face in being happy and successful at work. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah E. Brown. My guest today is Josselyne Herman-Saccio. She has been coaching for over 30 years and has coached more than 200,000 people. She's an author, an entrepreneur, a former #1 pop star, and yes, I did say pop star, and we'll talk about that in a minute. She has founded a nonprofit. She's a wife and a mother of 3, and she has a passion for empowering people to realize their dreams now versus someday. And she works on developing them to be unmessable with, forget the grammar, that's a good phrase, to be unmessable with no matter what life throws at them. And I'm really excited to talk with her today because of that philosophy. And she explains it all in her TEDx talk, which I have listened to twice. So I highly recommend that. So Josselynne, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So you were just telling me where you live. So tell people where you're living now and how you got there.
Well, I'm currently living mostly in Paris, which was a lifetime dream of mine since I was 16. So for 40 years, I've been dreaming about, quote unquote, someday moving to Paris. And I was leading a course that I designed called the Foundation for Being Unmessablewith in November. And I was talking to people about what are your someday dreams? There's no such thing as someday. All you have is right now. And I realized, wait a minute, I have a someday dream called someday I'm going to move to Paris. So in that moment, I said, that's it. No more someday. What has to happen? By when am I going to have it happen? And we set a date of May 1st and we got on a plane on May 1st. And now I am living that dream.
Wow, that's a great story. So for all of you who think you can't manifest your dreams, it was 40 years in the making, and she realized it because she didn't give up, but she turned someday into today.
Yes.
So great. That's a great story. So tell me what you do every day.
I coach people. So I work with people in lots of different environments. So I either work with them one-on-one, or I work in group coaching settings, or I lead courses, or maybe on a podcast like this where I work with, people to get the message out there to make a difference with people and have them really see that they don't have to be messable with in life. And everybody that I've worked with, including, billionaire CEOs, have something that messes with them, whether it's some limiting belief or a view they have about themselves or some situation in their life. There's something that is a lid on what's possible in various areas of people's lives. Even if they're super successful in one area, there might be another area where they experience being stopped or constrained. So I work with people to dismantle what messes with them, free them up so that they can create and fulfill on any vision, any dream that they have.
Very cool. Are there any typical messable problems that get in people's heads?
A big common thread that I've noticed in my work with people is things that people think are true that aren't. That's one of the top things that messes with people. I'll give you an example from my own life because, that's where I can draw examples from. But when I was 4 years old, I wanted to be a singer more than anything. I would sing to my stuffed animals. I would sing to anybody, captive audience, my dog, And at some point I was about 5 and I was sitting in a car with my dad and he was smoking a cigar and he had been a painter, but I noticed he wasn't painting as much. So I asked him, why'd you stop painting? And he said, well, you can't do your art as your career. And in that moment, it wasn't so much that he said that, because he said lots of things that I didn't listen to in my life. But in that moment, I said to myself, you can't do your art as your career. And that was now like the truth. And it became solid, like a piece of metal in my life. And I gathered evidence for it. And I went through life going, well, I'm not going to have a dream to be a singer if you can't do it as a career, because I don't want to be a starving artist. I'm going to go be a business person. I'll run a company. I'll do this. I'll do that. And then when I was in my early 20s, I was in a transformative workshop as a participant. And whatever was happening in the conversation, I all of a sudden saw that maybe that's not the truth. Maybe it's a decision I made in the infinite wisdom of 5 that got solid, and it loosened. And within 3 weeks, I had a record deal, which was literally not going to happen. There was no way that was going to happen. And within 3 weeks.
Were you already singing in that band?
No, I didn't even know those girls. I mean, literally within 3 weeks, I not only met the girls, met the manager, got cast as the 5th girl in the group, and had a record deal on my table.
Well, you might as well tell our listeners the name of the group and the record.
Sure. The group was called Boy Crazy, with a K, because we could sing but not spell. And the name of the record that went number 1 was called That's What Love Can Do. And that was the number 1 hit after Whitney Houston's long string of the number 1 spot with I Will Always Love You. We were the next number 1.
And that happened all in 3 weeks.
Not the number 1 part. Getting the record deal happened. And then it took a couple of years, a year to record the record, then release the record, like that.
Okay.
1993. It was over 30 years ago. Oh my gosh. That's like a few kids ago.
That's very interesting. So you knew that was your dream. But when you, on your TEDx talk, for example, you talk about once you know what your dream is, take it back to the dream source. So
yes,
tell us a little bit about the dream source and why that step in the process is so important. Hi, this is Sarah Brown again, the host of the KTS Success Factor podcast for women. I hope you are enjoying this episode and gaining some tips and inspiration on how you can be happier, more successful, and experience less stress at work. If you would like to learn more about how you can take control of your career and do it your way, visit sarahebrown.com. There you will be able to download a free chapter from my book, Let Your Personality Be Your Career Guide. It contains information and exercises on how you can identify your unique interests, strengths, and needs, and translate that into career goals that are just right for you. Now back to this informative episode.
Yeah, well, most people, they fall into what I call the satisfaction paradox, and if you've ever accomplished anything that you wanted to accomplish, it's kind of like you're satisfied for like a minute. And then it's like the next carrot is there for you to chase. It's like, okay, when I work with actors, because I represent actors also, I have an entertainment company that I started, back when I got my record deal. I wanted to help people make their dreams come true in the entertainment industry. And invariably, somebody will be like, well, I really just want to get on Broadway. Then they get on Broadway and they're like, well, what I really want is I want to do TV and film. Then they get TV and film roles. And then they're like, well, what I really want is I want to direct. I mean, it's always the next thing. So people are very rarely satisfied. And I really believe that, satisfaction is accessible at any moment if you come from your dream versus trying to get to your dream. And I call that your dream source. So I work with people to say, okay, well, why do you even have that dream? So, I can either go backwards to when you were little or forwards to, let's say you got that Academy Award, then what would be available that isn't available right now? And I take people through a process. It's not difficult. I mean, it's pretty simple, but ultimately they get to something like, well, what would be possible is freedom or self-expression or whatever they get to. What I train them in is then bringing freedom to life versus trying to get it out of a circumstance or goal being realized, so that at any moment you could be bringing the presence of freedom to your conversation with any of your guests or to the barista at Starbucks or to your family. So it's an opportunity to create life versus react to life.
Mm-hmm. So it's what I call the 5 whys. When you think you know what you want, you ask why 5 times. And
That's great.
Yeah. So how do you know if you've got it?
Well, it's all made up. So, I mean, there's no it to get. It's just whatever empowers you. So I always tell people, relax. All right. It's etched in sand anyway. You can always create something new if you see another level or another layer to it. So I try and treat it with a little bit of humor too.
Mm-hmm. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Exactly.
But you do talk about the importance of speaking it out loud. And
Yes.
What is behind that?
Well, if you speak Aramaic, which nobody does, but in ancient Aramaic or Hebrew after that, the word abracadabra literally means I create as I speak. So creation, which is all the work that I do with people, is to move them from reaction or being messable with to creation or being unmessable with. So creating with your word, whether you speak it out loud or in your head, is a very powerful thing. And when you speak it out loud, it exists beyond your head. It exists in my relationship with you or with whoever's listening to this conversation right now. Then you start to fulfill on what you've created through action. So it's not like a law of attraction, which nothing against that. It's just, it doesn't stop at, oh, let me just speak it or write it down. No. You got to act on it. There's actions required. I didn't just magically get a record deal. I started introducing myself to people as a singer. I recorded a demo. I, scheduled a show. I mean, I took actions that a singer would take and then got results that a singer would have. So it's no different with any dream or vision that you have. You first start it by creating it in language, in word, speaking it, and then take the actions to fulfill on what you created. And then the part about being unmessable with comes in there, because people have a vision, they might say it, but then they get thwarted or stopped in being able to take the actions that would fulfill on it. And that's what I work with people on.
And I also find in my practice that saying it out loud also is really important in getting clear about it yourself, and that you don't really get clear about it until you voice it to another human being.
I think that's very, very powerful. In fact, there are studies that have been done. I think it's something like 45, but don't quote me on the number, 45% more likely to accomplish a goal that you've written down.
Yes, exactly. If you've written it down, you're more likely to accomplish it. And if you voice it to another human being, you're even more
likely. Exactly. So sharing is a huge part of the work that I do with people. It's not like rearranging your thoughts. No, you create it, you act on it, you engage with people about it, you make requests, you make promises. It's all interacting with human beings.
So what are your thoughts on goal setting in general?
I think goal setting is very powerful as long as you treat it like a game, not an expectation. So if I have a game to make X amount of money this month or next year or whatever it is, because I work with a lot of business people, so they have a goal to triple their income, let's just say. Then there's actions to take to fulfill on that. Now, when you end up at the end of the year, you've either succeeded or failed at accomplishing that goal. And if you're smart, you're checking in along the way to make sure that you're meeting your milestones so you're not completely off track. But the powerful thing about goals is to debrief them. So you debrief whether you were successful or failure. What were the actions that allowed for that goal to be fulfilled? Or what were the inactions that if I had taken would have accomplished what I said I wanted to accomplish? So the debrief, I find, is more valuable than even the result that got produced, because you get to see what's missing or what would make a difference or what was there that got in the way. There are some actions we take that don't really produce the results we're committed to, yet we're just going through the motions, taking actions just to spin our wheels. So I find the debrief around goals even more powerful than the goals themselves.
Oh, it's a very interesting. Do you need to do that with somebody else? Is it sufficient to do that by yourself?
I would not do much by yourself, because your brain, gets caught up in your own thinking and you can't see outside of it. So I always feel that it's very powerful to work with another person. And I have coaches, I mean, I'm a coach, but I'm also somebody who's coached, because I know that I can't see what I can't see. And that's why I hire coaches. That's why the people who hire me is to see what they can't see, tell them what they don't necessarily want to hear so that they can be who they want to be.
So why do you say there is no someday?
Well, in reality, there isn't. I mean, if you look in reality, there's no past right now, except whatever you're talking about called the past, but you're talking about it when? Right now. And there's no future except the future in your head or in your thoughts or in your language right now. So in actual reality, this is it. There is no yesterday, there's no tomorrow, there's no someday, and there isn't even a someday on the calendar. So let's get real. That's not even a real day, but there's nothing other than right now in reality. And the past and the future live right now in the conversation we are for the past or the future.
Got it. Okay. So if I were to summarize the essence of your message, it is this: there is no someday. Get in touch with what your dream is and start making it a reality today. And don't let those unmessable things get in the way. Is that the gist?
Yeah. Or develop the muscle to be unmessable with, because stuff is going to mess with you. It's just natural as a human being. The question is, can you dismantle it and move from reacting to creating in a shorter and shorter period? And it's a muscle, it's a practice, it's discipline.
Josselynne, what should I have asked you that I didn't, that would help my audience understand how to make their dreams real?
I think, and now I'm like, did you ask me this? But I don't think you did, which is, what does unmessable with mean? And a lot of people think it means, which it doesn't mean, being tough, or being resilient, or being somebody who's impervious to their emotions or something. And that's not what it means. So what I mean by being unmessable with is being able to create moment to moment and not get reactivated, not get hooked, not get stopped or thrown or down for the count. Being able to stay in action, fulfilling on what matters to you, no matter what life is throwing at you, good, bad, or ugly, no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, that you're able to be that kind of unmessable with embodiment of your vision.
Very, very cool. Josselynne, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women. If you like what you are hearing, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. And if you would like more information on how we can help women in your organization to thrive, then go to www.sarahebrown.com. You can sign up for our newsletter, read show notes, and learn more about our podcast guests, read my blog, browse through the books, or contact us for a chat. Goodbye for now.